Hi folks, let's try to analyze one of the world's most wanted drum beats in a way that even non-drummers can understand. So thank you very much for joining me today. The drum groove you just heard is really widely used in lo-fi, rock, singer-songwriter, trap, drum and bass and even punk. So let's find out what's so cool about this drum beat and how we can change it without changing the original vibe, because that's what really happens very quickly when you change something in a drum beat. You can easily turn it into something else, and that's not always what you want to do, right? And in case you wonder, my name is Marcus and I'm a drummer myself for like 45 years. I think I've learned a song or two in that time, and also I did my lessons, but don't worry, this is not about drum chops and technique. So without further ado, let's start. You've heard that one before, right? It's really a genre-crossing groove, like I've said in the beginning. This is tempo 108, which makes it a really nice, slow rock groove. It doesn't hurt anybody, but we can also play it very, very slowly, like 70. Which turns it into the lo-fi groove number 1. You hear this groove in almost every lo-fi track. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. And we can also play it a little bit faster, like 130. And with a little different sound, it could be a trap. And I go even faster, which is the perfect drum and bass groove. The only thing that's missing is maybe a very nervous hi-hat pattern or something, and a different sound. And now imagine you play a quarter note, an open quarter note hi-hat or something, and go really fast. And you have the perfect driving beat for a punk song. But let's slow down and start analyzing this groove. What makes it so special? Well, and before we start, let's focus on only the bass drum and not on the snare, which is always on 2 and 4, which is called the backbeat. And also the hi-hat pattern, you can pretty much ignore the hi-hat pattern. I just added it for a little bit better orientation. It's on the perfect 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and this makes it a little bit easier for you to read if you have absolutely no experience with such a drum grid. So let's focus on only the kick drum pattern. And what makes it so special is this long gap here in the middle of the bar, because this is what you normally would expect. The perfect quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what we all have in our brains. And when we change that, it gets interesting. So in this case, I move the kick drum to the next 8th note, and there it is, our long gap in the middle of the bar. And also this bass drum is a little bit closer to the second backbeat. It's like a trap. Okay, my first rule when I change such a beat to come up with a cool variation or something, I don't touch that gap, because that gap in this case is the most characteristic thing. So my first thought is always, what can I change around it? So in this case, when we don't want to touch the middle part here with a long gap, we can make changes before that, before the first backbeat and also after the last backbeat in this area. So let's do that. Let's add another 8th note here on the bass drum. In the beginning. Wonderful, the long gap is still there, but also the second bass drum note is very prominent. Those 2 kick drum notes here in the beginning are really pushing a groove forward. It sounds really like rock music. So maybe we can do the same at the end of the bar on the last 8th note, the 4 end. Oh, it's a bit cooler, but still very rocking. And of course, every time you have 2 options, you can combine them. So let's add that first 8th note here again. Oh! A little bit faster maybe. But have you noticed that this groove slowly turns into something else? It's no longer only about the long gap in the middle, it's also about the three kick drum notes. It's almost like those two elements are fighting against each other and trying to balance everything out, which is of course not a bad thing. But that long gap is not so prominent as it was before. And I think this is just a sweet spot we found. And I hope you found your sweet spot too by doing all the things to support the channel. Thank you very much. So far we only looked at the areas at the end and in the beginning of the bar and only played around with the eighth notes on the kick drum, which doesn't give us too many options, to be honest. So let's continue with 16th notes. So let me remove these two and continue with with one of the most common 16th note patterns. It's this one on the second 16th note of the 4. Very funky at this high tempo. Let's go slower. Let's do it like 84. Very cool. This is definitely a groove everybody loves. And you can also learn that such 16th notes work very well in slow music. It's a really good way to make slow music a little bit groovier. I personally hate all these very straightforward 8th notes based rock ballads, you know. Oh, you have no idea how bad it is to play. But for that reason, you can play like a 16th note, a very cool and light 16th note pattern on a hi-hat, and do a little 16th note syncope here and there to spice everything up. But you know, some rock ballads are really no fun to play as a drummer. But of course, that's my personal taste, okay? I mean, look at me. It's easy to see that I'm absolutely into underground speed metal punk, although I don't have any tattoos. Now figure that out. But there is another 16th note we can use. It's the last 16th note of the whole bar. And in this case I want to add a little bit dynamic. Very nice. And again, we have two options, so we can combine them and also add this beat here. Wow, cool. And when I now also add the 8th note from the beginning, we have this one here, which is one of my favorite beats. Let's go a bit faster. Very nice metal pattern. It's very cool to practice if you're a drummer, okay? Then this is a very good double pedal exercise. And still, of course, it's a very heavy pattern at the end of the bar, but the middle gap, it's not affected, which also makes the three heavy notes at the end a little bit more exciting. We can try to make it very straightforward. This is heavier, I think. But you see, it's the point of this video to show you the little things, okay? There are many options, but every option matters. So let's go a little bit slower and try everything with the 16th note at the beginning of the bar. And here we quickly run into new problems. These two kick drum notes for me are very specific, you know. This is one groove I always say you can't ignore it. You can play many grooves just in a song and they always work, but you play this groove or something like this, it's always like very prominent and it almost forces everybody else in the band to play the same. It's not such a light-hearted groove or funky groove. It really has a strong attitude, you know. Do-doom, dag, do-doom, dag. So let's try the other option here, this 16th note. And this is a very funky one. It works very nice, at least at this speed here at 95. But it sounds quite nervous when you play it a little bit faster. Always funky. I call this the fun syncope. It's always fun to play. You can always add more fun and more danceability to a groove, but you have to be careful as a drummer to not overplay this. Don't play this all of the time, you know. Imagine a straight rock song or metal song which is really straightforward, and you add this little fun syncope in combination with other things. It can work, of course, and that's what we are trying to figure out. Isn't it interesting that it's getting darker and darker? It's a really bad weather day today with thunderstorms and everything. But okay, I think it's interesting to see that everything we do in the beginning of the bar, like in the first quarter, seems to push the whole groove into a certain direction, while everything we do at the end of a bar, like in the last quarter, is more like a resolution. And what's also very interesting is the fact that we already found some very cool variations that we can combine with the original groove without destroying the vibe. Let me show you. Let me reduce the tempo again and copy our original groove here so that we have a 2-bar loop. And the first bar is the original one, and in the second bar I apply a little change. Maybe this kick drum note here. Very nice. Always try to, that's my advice, you know, always try to go for a 2-bar loop and not just a 1-bar thing that repeats all over again. I mean, in techno it's okay and other music is also okay, but when you're a singer-songwriter, for example, you're looking for a little bit more musicality in the traditional sense, try to figure out a nice 2 or even 4-bar loop for the drums. And also a 4-bar loop is very easy. Just do it like this. Copy everything again. Okay, this is the original, variation 1, the original, and variation 2. Like something like this. Okay, there's one important thing I really want to talk about, because so far we only added stuff to our original beat, you know. We found a very cool way to add more bass drum strokes, but we can actually do the same in a reverse direction and remove stuff from the original one, and that's also very exciting. So for example, this time let's start with the second variation and then play the original one like this. So it offers us quite a lot in the first half, and in the second half it gives us more room to breathe. And we can even go a little bit further and reduce everything, like start with the first original beat, copy it, and in the second half, in this one, I remove the first kick drum note, and I also reduce the tempo so that we really go into the lo-fi area again. And now listen. It's very exciting. We just created an even bigger gap in the middle of those 2 bars. So that's an important thing I really wanted to point out here, because it's not always about adding more and playing more and more and more to create more excitement. No, it's also the opposite, doing less to create more tension or whatever. And also, please always remember that in music, a rest has the same value as a note, okay? It's not just nothing and you or a time span where you have to wait until you can play the next note or something. No, you play a rest as well, if that makes sense. But whoa, I don't want to go too deep into that right now, but I want to make more videos like this one here, like groove tutorials, drum tutorials, whatever. Because remember, I'm a drummer and I love talking about all things rhythm. So let me know in the comments what you think. If you have any questions, suggestions, shoot. Also, please check out the videos in the outro. My name is Markus and I hope to see you soon in the next one.